So I'd like to welcome you to the first episode of the Winging It Aviary show. My name is Charlie, and I own Winging It Aviary in Lindenhurst, New York, on Long Island. I'm going to be answering some questions that were emailed to us. Let me just state right off the bat, everyone has an opinion. And you know what they say about opinions. I don't have to tell you. So any of the answers that I give are my opinions, not necessarily direct science. And that's pretty much it. So let's get started.
Mel Bell 1992 asks, do you have any solutions for parrots screaming for attention? I now know not to enter the room and try and quiet her down or anything because that will just reward her, but she still screams.
There's a couple of different things you could do, Mel Bell. First of all, any which you had mentioned in your question, you're aware that ignoring the behavior is the best thing to do. I'm not a fan of covering a bird's cage. I don't think that should be a way to get them to stop screaming. If you could stand sitting in the same room with the bird while they're screaming and not take them out of the cage, that would really be, in my opinion, the best thing to do. But the type of bird you're referring to is a Quaker, and Quakers tend to be cage territorial, so you're kind of walking a fine line here because you don't want them to get too used to their cage, but you don't want them to think that screaming is going to get them out of their cage as well. So I would reward her when she's quiet and ignore her when she is screaming.
It Takes an Ocean asks, should one get some kind of heater for his or her bird for the winter months? If so, what would be a good safe thing to get? I've always just thrown a blanket over the cage at night.
If you're comfortable in your home and you're not cold, then your bird is not cold. I keep my house around 65 degrees in the winter, and I have the air conditioning on all summer long. As far as getting a heater, I'm not a fan of heaters because you have to be careful what kind of coils are in there, what type of fumes may come from the heater. You may not smell it, but your bird may smell it, and it could, in my opinion, potentially be toxic to the bird. Now, I'm sure there are heaters out there that I'm not aware of that are bird safe. But again, if you're comfortable, I believe my bird is comfortable as well, or your bird is comfortable as well. I don't, again, agree to covering the bird to keep them warm. I've just never been a fan of covering my birds.
X Under Oath asks, we decided not to clip our cockatiel's wings since he obviously loves flying around the house whenever we let him. Are there any considerable disadvantages to letting him fly around the house every now and then, with supervision, of course?
To answer this question, I can't really say clipping is good or bad. I would have to know more about the environment the bird is in. Does your home have a lot of turns? Is the bird able to navigate those turns? Do you have a lot of windows? If you have a lot of windows, are there decals on the windows or things to make so that the bird could see that that's a window and they're not flying out of the house? It really boils down to the safety of your bird's safety, and the environment. Small apartments with large birds, not really a good idea to have them flying all over the place because they will crash and could potentially get hurt. A cockatiel, it's a small bird. They tend to be decent flyers. You just want to make sure they're not landing up on any ceiling fans that are running. If you're cooking, you don't want them obviously to land on the stove. and be very careful when the door opens, because they will fly out the door. And that goes for not clipping. That goes for clipping as well. Just because your bird is clipped, we're going to ignore that phone call. Just because your bird is actually, yes, we're going to ignore it. Back to where I left off. Just because you clip your bird does not mean you could go outside. She will call every phone until, this is my mom. I'm a 43-year-old man. My mom will call me until she'll call every phone until she gets me. Anyway, I do speak to my mom every day, and yes, I am a mama's boy. But so back to clipping again. Just because you clip does not mean your bird can't fly. You want to, when your bird is clipped, it should glide down. It shouldn't flop down. A nice swift wind will take your bird a good couple miles, even though it's clipped. So you always want to be prepared, have a harness on your bird. I would never walk outside with my bird, holding my bird in my hands without a harness. I've heard and seen way too many horror stories. People think my bird is clipped, it can't fly. Completely the opposite. It can fly. And you're asking for trouble.
AFP 520 asks, what suggestions would you have for an Amazon that plucks mainly from under the wing? I've tried anti-inflammatory, done blood work, all clear. She is collared most of the time and I only take it off once a week so she can preen, and it's all supervised. It really makes her miserable otherwise though.
You mentioned a collar. Now again, this is my opinion, and it might not be the opinion of others, but collars are not always the best, especially when you leave the collar on all the time. Depending how you put the collar on and what type of collar is used, you could be cutting off oxygen to that area of the bird. If you put a collar on the bird, it's almost like if you put a Band-Aid on yourself, eventually you have to take that Band-Aid off so air can hit the wound. You still want air to hit where the bird is plucking. Now you mentioned you've tried anti-inflammatories. Just curious as to what anti-inflammatory you've tried. There are many products on the line that claim to stop plucking, and then there are some that actually do work. You have Aviary, which helps calm down your bird. There's Featherific, which will help with the feathers. There's Featherin. There's other stuff called Pluck No More. There's also a product which you might not be aware of, many people aren't aware of. It's called Teaks, T for Beaks. It's human grade tea. I drink it. It's delicious. It's got chamomile in it. Has many different properties, different herbs and stuff. The one for plucking is called Calming Skin and Feather Tonic, and that has chamomile. Actually, it's just Skin and Feather Tonic, and in it is chamomile flower, calendula, red flower, clover, and a couple other things, and they're all of these natural herbs or teas are meant to do something else. For instance, calendula and chamomile help with anti-inflammatory. The chamomile is going to calm down the bird, relax it a little bit. It puts me to sleep. Or maybe I just work too much. I don't know. But this is a very good product to try. It's natural. It's it's decaffeinated. You don't want to boil it because then you're going to boil out all the good stuff. You just steep it in hot water. And then you can give your bird the water to drink. you could also spray your bird with it. Spray it in the areas that the bird is plucking. You want to spray, in your question you mentioned under the wing. You want to spray under the wing. And also you take the wet leaves and you're going to let your bird eat the wet tea leaves. I wouldn't put it directly in their food. I'd put a little cup on the side for them to eat. If you put it directly in their food and you feed your bird pellets, then the pellets are going to get mushy. And if you feed them seed, the seed's going to get wet. Now, I would imagine you change the bird food every day, so you don't have to worry about sprouting with the seed. But I would put it in a separate dish. Well, I do put it in a separate dish. And there's many different teas that do work on different ailments. They're not, again, it's all natural, it's not medicated. And even if your bird's not a plucker, this you could just give every day. It doesn't have to be for a plucking bird. It just so happens that this blend works well for pluckers.
Yummy Apology asks, how can I train finches to be hand-fed?
Don't bother. To train a finch to be hand-fed is very dangerous. The only time you should train a finch, or you're not training them, the only time you should hand feed a finch is if the mom or dad abandons the nest. Even if you hand feed the finch, it's not really going to be tame. They're very difficult to hand feed. They're very tiny, and their crops, if you're familiar with the bird's anatomy, the crop is where the food goes into first. Their crops are very, very tiny, and they're almost like a J shape. So the food comes up the neck of the bird, and the bird can aspirate very easily. And also, you say train your finch to be hand-fed. If your finch is eating on its own, his or her own, do not start hand feeding that bird. Now, if you are referring to having the bird eat out of your hand, then that's a different story. It's a little difficult with a finch. Can it be done? Maybe. Maybe not. The only time I've hand-fed a finch is when I've had to save its life.
Hug It Out Guys asks, my husband and I have 3 cockatiels and are considering getting another bird, possibly a cockatoo. I am wondering if they can live in the same home peacefully, be out of their cages at the same time, and maybe even be friends? Our birds are out of the cage quite a lot, and I wouldn't want that to change.
Obviously they have to be in separate cages. As far as having the cage in the same room, that's fine, in my opinion. You can also have the cages next to one another. You want the bird to get used to the other bird, but you want the cockatiels to be comfortable with the cockatoo and the cockatoo to be comfortable with the cockatiel. If you get the cockatoo when it's a baby, it's a little bit easier to train. Your problem's going to be your cockatiels. If they're older, they may not take to the cockatoo as well. Now, the cockatoo is larger than the cockatiel. The cockatiel might try to fight with the cockatoo, but the cockatoo thinks the cockatiel is playing with them. They don't realize their own strength, how strong they are, and they could very well hurt your cockatiel. You never want to leave the birds out of the cage unsupervised. They all need out-of-cage time. Yes, they can live in the same home peacefully. It's not going to happen overnight. Again, never unsupervised. Even if you think they're perfect together and they love each other, and like I said, there might come a time where the cockatiel gets mad and the cockatoo doesn't understand that the teal is mad, and just from pure size and strength of the cockatoo's beak, it could easily kill or hurt your cockatiel or cockatiels. That's all we have time for tonight. Please join us next week, tomorrow night, for our next episode of Ask Winging It Aviary.